my sons. Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and we are going to kind of look at how things have changed over the past year for Mama Bear Effect. So all you Mama Bears and Papa Bears out there, get ready for an interesting conversation. But before I introduce my wonderful guest for this evening, I would like to invite you, if you have a question for this evening's topic, please feel free to give me a call at 781-270-9199. Or if you would like to send me an email because you think of something when we're not live, or if you have a suggestion for a future topic, please feel free to email me at talk@bcattv.org. And as usual, I would like to thank the staff members, Mike Duvall and Corey McNeil, for giving me a hand this evening and making sure that everything runs smoothly. I would also like to thank Colleen Moore, who is director extraordinaire, and she makes sure that everybody stays in line wherever they should be, including me. And I would like to thank student volunteers Jolie Atwood and Maddie Shipka, who have given up their Wednesday evening to come help me out. So thank you, everyone. And definitely last but not least, I would like to thank my husband Paul for staying home for Daddy Date Night, and hopefully everyone is behaving themselves. Now I would like to introduce my wonderful guest for this evening, Adrianne Simeone. Is that right?
Yep, perfectly.
I'm always afraid I'm going to screw that up. And you are the founder of Mama Bear Effect.
Yes.
And just about almost exactly a year ago, you came on the show shortly after Mama Bear Effect was established?
I think,
or had you
no,
been?
we were incorporated in January of 2013.
Okay.
So that would have been,
so it was 1 year birthday, and now it's 2 year birthday.
Actually, no, 3-year birthday this
3
year.
year birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on again.
Thanks for having me again,
And
Linda.
can we start out? I just said you were on a year ago, but I don't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday morning. So could you kind of introduce yourself, tell us where you grew up, how you came to the Burlington area, and what led you to becoming a Mama Bear?
Sure. I grew up on the South Shore of Massachusetts, and I moved up here to Burlington when my husband and I were engaged, and we bought it here in Burlington. So my husband works in Woburn, so
Good choice.
we weren't. Well, he works in Woburn now. He was moving his business, so we weren't sure where he was going to be located. But Burlington was pretty, convenient
Central,
to pretty much
yeah.
anywhere. So that's been great. And personally, I just kind of grew up with the feeling that I needed to have a purpose in life, a way to give back, and I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but I kind of was just in a period of just waiting for it to kind of come to me.
Okay.
So I knew I wanted to be a mother, and we had, when I started Mama Bear Effect, I had 2 children at the time, and then in the process I've had a 3rd child, who will be 2 this year.
Because you didn't have enough to do around that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and just in that process, I think you can probably understand just when you become a parent and you just realize how magnificent this responsibility is that we have, and it's just amazing and also very heavy. I mean, it's a
scary
huge
too,
responsibility. It's a lot. So
you can't keep your kid in a bubble forever. Eventually, they have
Right.
to, leave the front door.
Yeah, and I just feel like as you kind of change the way you look at other kids. You just realize, that this is a very special person who, started out as a small, innocent little baby. And there's a lot of kids out there that go through stuff that's really, it's heartbreaking. And I think a lot of times we just don't want to think about it.
Right.
And so, with the way the media does it, you'll hear some horrible story on the news and it just crushes you and you feel helpless because how can you change this?
Right.
And so that's kind of how I came to Mama Bear Effect, was, just being crushed, by a story, to the point where I felt like there was something I needed to do about it. And as I did more research, I felt like there was an impact that I could make through education.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit, because I know we went over this on the last show, but what exactly does Mama Bear Effect do? You are an organization, you meaning Mama Bear, is an organization that helps prevent and educate people for child sexual abuse, and to support victims and their families to eliminate it or fight it, or what would be the correct terminology?
It's kind of evolved over time.
Okay.
It kind of started as an awareness campaign. I started a Facebook page, and I just kind of wanted to start getting the word out there that reality,
there is a problem.
Right. I mean, it's called the silent epidemic. This Center for Disease Control had done a huge survey of over 17,000 people, and most of these were middle-class, college-educated people.
Oh, wow.
And the results came back that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men had reported that they had experienced forced sexual abuse as children.
As children. Now, define children. Is it up to 18 or
Up to
16 or
18.
21? 18.
And the perpetrator had to be at least 5 years older than them. So the reality is that there were probably people who had been sexually abused and they didn't meet that cutoff. So the reality is it's probably even more than that.
So there may have been like a 2-year or 3-year. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So when that study came out, the government did put out a grant program to try to create some organizations and support organizations that had been working on this. But since then, there really hasn't been much else done on that front.
When did the government put out that?
This was in 2002, 2003.
Oh, wow, so a while ago.
Yes. I think they offered $5 million grants to various organizations, and one of them is Massachusetts Citizens for Children. So I had reached out to them, and I was on their board for a couple of years. They do a training program, which I helped bring here to Burlington for prevention.
So where do you bring these trainings to? You said to Burlington. Is it in the schools? Is it through the library? Or
there was a training program. They brought in a bunch of people to become trainers. So actually, I was one of the people
like
to take this training.
Okay.
Yeah, the training of trainers. And you're supposed to work in pairs and offer them to the community. But it takes a lot of time to get all this stuff put together and the communication. So it's still in the works. I've been so busy with Mama Bear and my kids that I haven't been able to attend a lot of these meetings, but it's still going on. They've been working to create a coalition with Winchester, Woburn, like the towns. They're trying to create coalitions within the towns and involve community leaders, so like our police department's on board, and various other people are involved in that.
Now, could Mama Bear Effect be considered a partnering organization, or is it different than that? I'm not quite sure.
I think we should be partnering together, but both of us,
still too young.
I'm pretty much a director by myself. I have some people that volunteer their time, and they have a director and assistant. So they are also juggling a lot of balls, because there's also other states that have been reaching out to them wanting to bring the Enough Abuse campaign to their state. So their director, she is just all over the place, trying to figure out where she should be.
Okay, just trying to stay afloat instead of.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so their main focus is doing these, training sessions in front of a group of people, which I think is great.
Group of adults?
Adults.
Okay.
Yep. So and a lot of their focus too is on youth-serving organizations, training school teachers and daycares and recreation departments.
Okay.
Because
like
there's
the Boys and Girls Club and the Y.
Yep.
And okay.
Yep. Because there's a lot of
that work with
loopholes in terms of how their policies are set up, and training staff, because unfortunately there is a lot of abuse going on within, especially school systems and sports
Scary.
programs.
I
There's
mean,
actually
a lot of abuse. Forget about not forget about, but child sexual abuse and child abuse is just way too prevalent in today's society that it is scary.
Yeah, and actually just a week ago at prep school in Rhode Island, 40 former students came forward with allegations of sexual abuse among various staff and a couple other students over the past years. So that's another scandal that's erupted just locally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I think part of it is just the education for the survivors of the, would you call them survivors or victims or?
Survivors.
Okay. Telling them to come forward instead of keeping it a secret.
That always helps. Anytime anyone comes
Okay.
forward and shares their story, they usually find out that there's someone else that they know.
Okay.
Unfortunately, what also always happens too is that usually there are people that don't believe them. They kind of want to see proof, or they they have a hard time believing it themselves.
Right,
And so it's
okay.
really hard for people to speak out. So when someone does, it takes a huge amount of
Yeah.
courage
Okay.
for them to do that. But so my main focus, I kind of see parents as the frontline defenders for their kids,
Okay.
and and to empower them, and not just empower them to protect them from sexual abuse,
Okay.
but also to help them build healthy behaviors and understand what appropriate behaviors are. Because I'm going to kind of jump ahead to one
No,
of your
that's
later
okay.
questions.
I mean, this is just a
Yeah.
guideline.
Yeah.
We can throw this on. No, I'm not going to throw it off the set.
We
because
probably could. I could
will
go on
need it.
and on.
Keep going.
But 40% of sexual abuse is estimated to be perpetrated by minors.
Really?
Starting at age 12. That's when it peaks.
Oh,
So
that
the
it
reality,
peaks?
it peaks at age 12. So the reality, that's like the
Ooh.
height. It kind of takes a quick jump.
Wow.
So pretty much as soon as these kids are entering puberty, the reality is their parents aren't talking to them about it.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe getting, a 30-minute seminar in school or something telling them what the heck's going on with their bodies, because no one else really
If
is
they
telling
even get
them.
that much.
Right. And so the reality is there's a connection between the level of education that these kids are getting, and then also, because I've been doing a lot more research on this, because I actually started a master's program in social work.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. So I've had access to all these research papers. Education and empathy. Children that have a stronger sense of empathy towards the feelings of other people are less likely to abuse other people.
That makes sense.
Right. But are we necessarily thinking about it consciously in terms of how we parent? Are we looking at
good
our kids
point.
and saying, okay, I value the importance of prevention, and I want to make sure that my kids understand what consent means, and that they understand what a respectful, healthy relationship looks like, and do they understand how to handle themselves when they're dealing with all these hormonal changes going on. It's really scary for some parents. They don't really know how to start or where to talk about it, and so a lot of times they just choose not to and figure, well, my parents didn't really talk to me about it.
I know I'm guilty of that. So, because it's
Yeah.
like, again, I'm afraid to bring it up because I don't want to give my child nightmares.
Right.
She's 7 years old now, and yeah, I need to say something, but I don't want her having nightmares or being afraid to make new friends or
Right.
talk
Which
to
that's
people.
a common fear, and I think when you learn more about how you're supposed to talk to your kids about it, it's actually it's not scary at all. They actually end up coming to you asking more questions, and because it's kind of like a rule thing. Kids like to know what the rules are.
Okay.
And so when you kind of
Well, my kids
explain
like to make
them-
the rules.
Right, yeah, that too, which is also a good thing, in terms of, being in charge of their body and stuff like that. But it's something we need to talk about more, a lot more. And I know one of your questions was, when do we start talking about it?
Well, let's talk about that now.
Right. As soon as your child's born, when you are talking to your child, you can start using the proper words. When you're changing their diaper, giving them a bath. My 1.5-year-old knows, she's a girl, she knows, what her private parts are called. So she actually can point to them and tell me what they are. And so when you do that, you build a sense of respect, that they understand that these body parts have a name. They're not cutesy little names. They're not supposed to be funny, because your elbow isn't funny. We don't have nicknames for our elbows or our noses. We just call them what they are. And
Although I think all 5-year-old boys think that, potty humor is...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my daughter never did that, but my son, I'm like, what? This just is genetic.
Oh, I know.
But, yeah.
There's got to be like something programmed into
Oh, there's something. I don't know what it is, but it's true. But I think, you can kind of create a line. There's a line between being funny and saying stuff, and then there's a line of, okay, well, you know what, you're not going to stick your butt in someone's face, because that's not appropriate.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be in a scary way, like that's sexual abuse if you do that. You just say, no, that's just inappropriate. And so,
That's
you
just
talk
wrong.
about... when you talk about your 7-year-old, you just explain to her that your private parts are private. We wear underwear. When we go to the beach, we wear bathing suits. It's not something that we show to other people, and so it's something it's your property, and so it's not something that we share with other people. And that if anyone ever touched them or wanted to look at them or take pictures, that's against the rules, and that's an adult. All adults know that rule. And so if anyone ever came and tried to do something with her private parts or touched her in any way, even if it was they were rubbing her arm or doing anything, that she should always come to you.
Right.
And so...
unless it's a doctor and you're in the...
Right, and you're in the room and,
And there's a problem.
Right. Yeah, and, I would even say for parents that when you go to the doctor's office, ask the doctor, just have a little talk with your child about private parts, because it's good for them to hear it from other people.
Oh, okay, good point.
And the one thing...
So mom and dad just aren't making this stuff up.
Right, exactly, because they like to believe it more from other people than us.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and the more people they hear it from, it just reinforces that. So one of the things I actually recommend is that every child should have 5 people in their safety circle.
Okay.
And so it should be mom and dad, probably a grandparent, an aunt, and then someone that's not related to them. Maybe it's a teacher or a babysitter. And these people should know that they're in that safety circle. And these people should know and support their body safety rules.
Okay.
And another reason I do that is because a lot of times it's the people that are trusted most with that child that are more likely to abuse them. So unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's a grandparent, or it's an uncle, or it's a parent, or it's a sibling. It's not usually someone outside of the family. A lot of the times it's someone that's living in the house. And that's what makes it so hard for people to talk about. Because
so how do you discriminate, I guess, for that safety circle how do you know that one of those people isn't
you
the
don't
perpetrator?
know. But when they know that your child is aware of these rules, and they know that that person is aware, you can actually, I believe, you can deter people from being abusive towards a child.
Okay. It's almost to say, hey, look, I got my eye on you.
Well, just to say,
not really, but
we're aware of this,
yes,
and we want you to be part of this. And
it's not a secret.
Right, it's not a secret. And unfortunately, every time a parent comes forward to me and says, someone in my family sexually abused my child, and I talked to my child about body safety, my child knew. And I ask, I'm just curious, did the perpetrator know? And they said no.
Okay.
And I feel like there's too much responsibility being put on kids.
Especially kids that young.
Right. And it's because we don't want to have these conversations. It's really uncomfortable. And so my mission is to find ways to just talk about it.
Okay.
So, we create these coloring pages for parents to sit down and do with their kids.
Some of my friends have gone on and said, oh, this stuff's amazing.
I did those coloring pages on a whim, and they went viral. And it just goes to show that parents are so desperate for tools to have these conversations.
Okay.
And so I always invite other people to be in part of this conversation with your kids. I don't want it to be a secret between you and your parents about body safety. I want you to have your child learn her body safety rules and then go teach her grandmother and her papa that, guess what, I know my body safety rules and these are what they are.
And call them body safety rules.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that also kind of breaks the secrecy, because a lot of times in our last conversation it was like, let's do this, but don't tell anybody because your mom will get mad at you.
Right.
So that kind of breaks.
They're breaking that bond between the child and because they're not, they don't know what's going on at home. They don't know if there's that conversation. Most people assume that kids aren't, because no one talks about it. You don't really hear about it. A lot of times if you see it on the TV, it's like,
and of course it never happens in my family.
Right. You're not going to learn about those ones on the news, because the reality is it'll say, man arrested for sexual abuse of a child. Well, it says a child, but what you don't realize is that child is someone in his family.
Okay.
So those details are always going to be left out.
They have to protect the child, too.
So if it's anonymous, if they're not naming the connection, I would assume it's a family member.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does it ever happen when it's not a family member?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
A lot of times it could be, it could be someone in the neighborhood, it could be a teacher, it could be a coach, or there are people that are predatory. I mean, these are predators in the sense that they are preying upon children, but there's something called a situational offender and a predatory offender.
Oh, that sounds
I know.
interesting.
A predatory offender is someone that is directly interested in targeting a child. So they will put themselves in a position where they'll be around children. So maybe they get a job
Like the
as
guy
a
hanging out at the
counselor.
playground or,
Yeah, or it could be that. There's a wide range.
I don't mean to, gender stereotype, but
Well, we should not gender stereotype, but the reality is the majority are male. There are female offenders, but just about 90% of the time it is male offenders.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, so don't feel bad. I use the term he a lot of the times, but yes, obviously there are a lot of female sexual offenders, and they all have different motivations and mental issues going on.
Okay.
But so a lot of times I think people think that there are predators waiting to prey upon their children, but the reality is that the situational offender does it for a different reason. It's not necessarily sexual motivation. They're not necessarily pedophiles. And this is the hard part for people to understand, but I feel like this will help people understand why it's so important to talk about it.
Yeah.
Depression, isolation.
Is it a power struggle?
It's, in some ways, they want to dominate another person because it makes them feel powerful.
Okay.
They want to manipulate a person. They might even abuse a child to seek revenge on someone else. If a parent,
like in a divorce
parents
situation.
get divorced and the father is, most of the times it is, I've never heard of it being a mother, but not that it's impossible.
Just a scenario. It doesn't
Right,
have to be.
and that will happen. And the mother is pretty powerless because if she goes and says that my daughter says my ex-husband sexually abused her, she has no proof.
Okay.
The child's testimony is not proof enough that it happens.
Wow.
So
you're working on trying to change that as well.
I support a lot of organizations. I raise awareness for a lot of these cases.
Okay.
It's so heartbreaking. But
I can't watch the news anymore. It just depresses me.
I know. But I mean, sometimes it could be someone who's going through, a death in the family, or they lost their job. They're dealing with stress. So we call it poor coping skills.
Okay.
So rather than deal with the issues they have, they seek sexual gratification as a means of coping with their problems.
Okay.
And so therefore they go for whatever is the easiest target, which is a lot of times a child. Okay. So they're not necessarily predators in the sense of they're out there looking for a child. It's more about access. So, say for example, you have a family gathering and there's a lot of people in your house.
Okay.
There could be an extended family member that has that opportunity because there are a lot of people and they're kids, and the kids are all friendly because they feel like everyone in their family's friendly, their parents trust
and they're
everyone.
At my house. They have to be friends.
And so the opportunity exists. Or, say for example, a sibling is babysitting a younger sibling, or some kind of situation like that, and it's something continual, and that opportunity arises, and they take advantage of it. So it's not necessarily that they sought out that position; it existed. And the hard thing to understand too, in terms of reoffending, is the question lies is if someone perpetrated against someone in their family, are they a threat to the rest of society? Would they go that extra step of preying upon other children?
So would they go outside the family?
Right. If they go in jail, should they be listed as a sexual offender? Or are they going to offend, as a predator?
Now, okay. Now I do get that.
Yeah.
Now, just something that kind of popped into my mind. In most situations, or statistically, I don't think it's in here, so if you don't know the stats, is it generally a co-ed thing, like male, female, or are there sometimes where it's like the same gender that's being abused, or?
A lot of times, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It does not really matter to them. Unless they're a specific type of offender that they prefer a certain sex.
Okay.
But, a lot of offenders will offend male and female.
So it's like a power.
They could consider themselves heterosexual and still offend against boys or girls. Yeah. So I think a lot of times there's this perception that boys are at so much less of a risk, that parents
Okay.
don't feel like they need to protect their boys. And then when it happens to these boys, they feel to blame because they feel like they
Okay.
should have been able to protect themselves. And there is an added level of shame of a boy being sexually offended.
Okay.
Even if it's a male on, a child or a teacher, a lot of times they talk about these teachers seducing a young boy, or, a teacher has sex with student. It's like, no, that teacher did not have sex with that student. That teacher raped that student.
Okay.
So even the way society kind of perceives it downplays the impact on the survivor.
Now, back to the perpetrator. If it's like a family situation, I know we had just talked about, a victim being in the family is the society in general at risk. Well, what about other people in that family?
Right.
A lot of times, is it just one victim or multiple victims within the same family? Or does it, is it a case-by-case basis?
It's a case-by-case kind of thing. It just depends on the dynamic of the family.
Okay.
Because say, for example, you had an older sibling and just one younger sibling.
Okay.
Sometimes you could have an older sibling and multiple younger siblings, and they only choose one. So
Okay.
it depends on, what the mentality of the abuser is. Are they looking for someone they can control? Are they looking for this shy child? Are they bullying that child into submission? Or is it just about what's accessible at that moment?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Wow.
it's really hard. I know people really want to have black and white. Okay, I want to know
Okay.
who these abusers are. I want to know how they act so I can identify them. And I hate to tell people, but it's like the reality is you can't. You just have
Well,
to accept that
yeah.
the reality is anyone is capable of doing that. Because that's just the best
Exactly.
approach. I
Right.
mean, there are certain things you can be educated on so that when you see, someone that touches children a lot or seems to pay more attention to the children, then, they're not really interacting with their peers more. Those are red flags. So rather than say, oh, wow, he's a really nice guy. He's been playing with those girls in that tea party for 2 hours. People should be like, and that's weird because that's not appropriate. You know what I mean? Like, what
That's
guy wants to
weird.
do that? Some people just aren't even aware that would be kind of a little, you're not going to go pull the guy aside and say, hey, what are you doing, you pedophile.
What do you
But,
really want to
yeah,
do?
you just kind of say, you want to keep an eye on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or if someone isn't, he keeps tickling someone
Okay.
and they're not really, listening, the child saying stop, stop, and they just keep doing it, you kind of want to step in and say, okay, no, the child said no, and you need to
Child said
listen.
stop,
Right. Yeah, like, sorry, that's one of our body safety rules is that when someone says no, we need to listen,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unless you get the goofy child who says no and then jumps back on
Right,
the same
exactly.
person. It's like, okay, this is not a game.
Right. Yeah.
Now, how often, if at all, does sexual abuse also involve like physical, like I don't want to say regular physical abuse, but like physical abuse?
Not necessarily all the time.
So there's not necessarily a connection there.
No. I mean, they can
Or
be related.
other forms of psychological abuse.
Yeah. I would say someone that physically abuses could be more likely to also sexually abuse, but someone that sexually abuses is not necessarily physically abusive.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, a lot of times the abuse is under the guise of a loving relationship. And so that's
Okay.
kind of what establishes that control, is the child doesn't see this as them being hurt. This person isn't physically hurting me. Something weird is going on, and I don't feel like this is appropriate, and I don't really know what to do about it, But when you feel physical pain, someone's hurting you or someone's saying mean things to you, that's wrong.
Yeah,
And so that's
okay.
kind of what enables it, and so that's why education is so important.
Okay. All right. Now, what are some of I know we touched upon this a little bit, but what are some like the best practices to educate parents in avoid, how does I say, protect their children, like minimizing the opportunity?
I think, this is something I want to build for Mama Bear on another worksheet, but I think people need to look at their child and see who is most involved in their life. Do you have a babysitter or a nanny that's there all the time? Who are their friends? Are they going over to play dates? Do they sleep over their grandparents' house? You know, what activities are they involved in? And kind of build it out. So the people that spend the most time with your child are the ones that should be most educated.
Or in that safety circle.
Right.
Was it safety circle
A
that you called
safety
it?
circle,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to make sure I use the correct terminology.
Right, because I mean, it's such a hard thing because, you know, especially now, like I'm at the age where my daughter's going for play dates. And so, say for example, you know, this happened. Someone invited her over for a play date, and I didn't know them. And they were like, well, she can just take the bus home and come over here. And I was like, I'm going to have, you know, oh no, I'll drop her off. And, you know, I stayed for the whole play date because I don't know. You don't know.
I always assume for like the first play date,
right.
I'm expected to be there for the first time.
Right. But even when she was in preschool, I had someone that was like, oh yeah, I can just pick her up and bring her home. And I was like, I'm not even sure what your first name is. But some people have that attitude of, it's no big deal.
That's actually happened to me in the reverse, where, you know, one of my kids' friends is like, okay, here, I'll come back in 2 hours, bye. And I'm like, okay. You know, all right, fine. I'm not going to reciprocate this way.
But you can see, you know what I mean? You can see. So then it's like, how do you tell this person that your child's educated in body safety?
Yeah.
It's kind of awkward, isn't it?
Because then they're like, well, do I have to be concerned?
Right. Right. So that, I think, is that comment, because then it's like, oh, well, are you accusing me of this? You know, so that's my challenge of how do I help parents have those conversations with other people.
But also, you know, not to digress, but also in a situation like that, you want to know what the home is like for sexual abuse. Are there guns around? You know, my daughter wanted to become friends with this little girl in her class, and the daughter's dad, who lived with them, you know, had a parole officer. Okay, why does your dad have a parole officer?
I know. So what did you do?
I just we never went
just
back
never
there
did the
for
play date.
dates. It's like, okay, if we're going to have play dates, you either come to my house, or we go to a park, or we go to a restaurant or something, because I'm not, or if I bring you over to her house, I'm going to stay there and keep an eye on you, because, it was just, that was a little too scary for me.
Yeah. I know. So, like, I created these parent packs.
Okay.
So,
what's in a parent pack?
A parent pack has, you know, just like an age-by-age guide.
Okay.
To help parents, whether it's like infants to toddlers, grade school, teens, and then it has some other stuff in there. And we're actually going to be redesigning them and building a lot more information into them.
Oh, okay.
So this is like a really big project for us. But so I feel like even when someone goes over for a play date, they could bring a parent pack and say, oh, hey, I don't know if you're aware of this organization, but, you know, I'm involved in it. And, you know, I just want to pass this information along to you because I think it's really important. Because we need to create this bridge of how do we get more people on this team, you know, because so many of my friends are like, you've changed the way I parent my kids, and I'm just so grateful that this information is out there. And that's the reality, is that this information should be out there everywhere, and it's not. And it
goes back to the original, how do you raise awareness?
Right.
Well, you tell people about it. And
so I kind of feel like I've kind of stumbled into this, you know, I've kind of fallen down the rabbit hole, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
So, you know, the website, I'm just constantly putting more information on the website because that information is just not out there for people. I get the statistics of what people are Googling, you know, that come to our website, you know, so it's just, you know, there are people that are looking to be educated on this.
Now, we may have touched upon this, but if you suspect, or back that up, why would you suspect if your child was being sexually abused? What are the signs? What are the symptoms, the behaviors to look for?
Usually it's a change in behavior.
Okay.
So you know your child really well. If they start acting withdrawn, or they start acting out, they start talking back to you, they change their eating habits, or they start waking up.
Some of that could just be developmental.
It could. That's the thing. I mean, for one child, she started having migraine headaches. And
Oh,
so
okay.
the mother took her to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, it's not uncommon for children at this age to have migraine headaches. But it never occurred to say, well, maybe is something going on that's stressful in her life. So,
like as far as
sometimes,
talking back, I mean,
Right.
5-year-olds stomp the foot, the eye roll, the
Right.
head toss. I mean,
right. So it's not like you want to say, honey, have you been sexually abused? But, you just kind of take that opportunity and say, is there something, you can talk to me anytime that you want to. And, every couple months I recommend that people kind of find a way to review body safety. There's a lot of books out there about it. So we keep a lot of books in our house for it. So the kids actually pull them out, and we keep books about empathy and feelings and respecting other people and, talking about how there's all different kinds of people out there. And so just kind of keeping these kinds of conversations on top of the pile, in a sense, so that they know that you're aware. And some parents, you might even just say, has this ever happened to you? Because if it has, it's okay, and I can help you. We started last year doing card campaigns because a lot of these children, they have to testify.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times they're testifying against someone they loved, a parent, a grandparent, or someone they're
Uncle
afraid
Joey
of.
or
A cousin, or someone that may have intimidated them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going through. They've gone
especially
through
if it's like this power.
a power struggle. And no one can know what's going on because they're in their privacy has to be respected. The case has to be protected to make sure no details get out there and nothing gets thrown into the mix that could say, okay, well, this information was out there and this has been swayed this way. So there's a lot of, they're in this closet and there's no support for them. Pretty much.
Child.
Right. If someone is sick and they have cancer, you can start a Facebook page and people can rally for them and, wish them well. When this happens to a child, no one can know what's going on with them. So here are all these feelings that they're, circled around with shame and fear and doubt and just wanting this to be over.
Right.
And so we started doing these card campaigns where people send a card of support just telling them how brave they are and that someone is thinking of them.
Okay.
And it's made, and it means something to the parents too, because here these parents feel powerless, and here they're also struggling with all these feelings because usually it's a person that they trusted.
A lot of times feel like they failed too.
Right, because they're like, they can't believe that it happened to them, which
And
who
I
would
let
believe
this
that?
happen to
Right, and they feel like, and then when you look back, they see certain things, and then all of a sudden the pieces kind of start coming together.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Right.
Yeah.
So they feel like they can't do anything to help their child. So it's really been empowering. And then on the other hand, it's helped people feel like they can make a difference and make them become involved. It makes them, realize that this isn't a hopeless...
I did my good deed for the day.
Right, yeah, and it's not a hopeless thing that this has to happen to a child, that we can help them through that process.
Okay.
And so I've actually had my kids, my daughter, do a card for these kids because then it helps the conversation too. Because she says, that girl who, she has to talk on that, in court about the person that touched her private parts. It just makes them aware that this happens to kids and that these kids are good kids and that there's nothing for them to be ashamed of.
And
so
the child didn't do anything wrong.
Right, she did the right thing by telling.
Yeah.
And so this is just another way to make your child show, you're pretty much proving to them that you would be proud of them for telling if they needed to tell something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how would we find out about one of those campaigns?
A lot of times we post it on the Facebook page,
Facebook page,
or if people go to our website, we have like an email list. So we pretty much email usually no more than once a month because I'm too busy. I just don't have time.
You have 3 kids.
Yeah, I think people are afraid they're going to get like tons of emails. I'm like, no, I just don't have the time to email you all the time. So if we're emailing you, it's usually just, it's something important.
Okay.
But it's, I try to get at least one card from every state.
Okay.
So if someone wants to, represent their state and send a card, it means a lot. It means a lot to us that we can do this for these kids.
Do you actually do this, like these children can be in any state? Or
Any
are they
state.
generally like Massachusetts?
Nope, any state.
Oh, wow.
Yep. When we did our first card campaign, a girl from Massachusetts had a jean jacket, and she had Brave from the Disney movie.
Oh.
Someone had painted it on the back for her because she had to testify. And so after she testified, she sent the jacket to the next girl.
Oh, wow.
And so, and, her mother was just saying how great she felt that she could pass that on to her. So it's just, it's so interconnected because it's helping the survivors. It's helping the people who have gone through this before because they feel like they can, use their experience and connect and make these people feel like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I have to admit, this past Christmas season, I thought of you a lot because I think last year when you appeared on the show, you were talking about, don't throw a kid at Santa and say, you have to sit on Santa's lap, and the kid's screaming, going, no, don't make me, here,
Yeah.
So, I think it is having some effect. Yeah. But for those who might not remember our conversation last year, why would I be upset why should I not force my child to go sit on Santa's lap or go see the Easter Bunny or...
Body autonomy. That is the word. Body autonomy. Kids need to know that their body is their property. And so even though it's a small thing, and a lot of people, I still see it on social media, HuffPost parents is like, let's see your funny Santa pictures of your kids screaming. And I'm like, it's not funny. It's not funny. Like, I understand, maybe they were happy for a second and then all of a sudden they realized and they freaked out. But it's like, I don't really feel like we should be delighting in our children being scared.
Yeah.
Because why would we want to scare our children and think that that's funny? So it's kind of, it kind of puts us in a position of forgetting what our responsibility is and also forgetting what their rights are. They have a right, and especially at that age, at that young age, everything is about security. That's why they're freaking out, because they need to build that bond with parents. They need a safe place. And so if we're not really establishing what those rights are in terms of what they should expect for treatment from other people, they feel like, well, what's the point? I don't have a say. It's not my choice. So we want to make sure that kids have a feeling of empowerment, that this is my body and I have rights.
And it's also not just Santa. It's like, old Aunt Ethel or something. Go give her a kiss. Give her a nice hug. And it's like...
no, it's not a sign of respect to make your child, hug someone. Affection should be a mutually consensual experience.
Wow. So, actually, I just like looking at all of these going, okay, where do I start? Now, back to the card campaign. If a child does come forward saying something's not right, what is the normal process? What does a parent do? Do they, immediately call the school? Does the parent confront the accuser? What is like a best practices for that? I mean,
if a parent suspects or a child discloses, the best thing to do is just get the basic information down and tell the child that you're really proud of them for telling you that it's not their fault and that you're going to have to call some people for help.
Okay.
But that, it's going to be okay, and that you're going to figure it out with them, and they're not going to, be alone. And then you're going to have to call and, file a report.
Okay.
You definitely do not want to say anything to the accuser, which is really hard for parents, because a lot of times that person could be in the next room. So, it's really hard.
And it's also almost a betrayal on the parent's behalf. It's like, how could you do this?
Right.
You want to go and you'd end up in jail.
Yeah, I know. And so, and that's the thing too, is a lot of times the parents, they do the right thing. They report and they have the restraint to not act on that anger as much as they want to. So, a lot of times people will say, you're a better man than me. I would have killed the guy. And a lot of people will be like, that doesn't make me feel any better. That makes me feel worse, because it makes me feel like, oh, what am I don't love my kid enough to kill someone. It's like, oh, I'm just weak that I was able to control myself. It takes you don't want the child to feel responsible for something bad happening to someone, because they're afraid of that. They're afraid that that's their fault. Maya Angelou, I don't know if you know this, when she was a young girl, she was raped by her mother's boyfriend. And she told someone, and I think he served a day in jail or something like that. And then apparently her uncles killed him.
Oh, wow.
And she didn't talk for like 2 years or more than that because
Wow.
she was so afraid that whatever came out of her mouth that someone could die by
Oh,
what she
wow.
said. So the impact that we have on our kids, the way we respond to it is very
Okay.
important. It's just best to focus on the fact that, they did the right thing and the person that did it, whatever, that there's something wrong with that person and they need help.
Okay.
It's kind of, people were like, they want to say to their kids, oh, well, there's bad people out there. It's hard because
Yeah, where's
one,
out there?
out
Out
there,
there could be in the next, in the living room,
right.
or
And then
in the
they think of
kitchen.
the word bad as a person that's scary or hurtful. And here's this person that acts very loving toward them, and they don't seem like a bad person at all.
Yeah.
So, that whole idea it can be really conflicting for kids.
Right. Especially with the perpetrator, reminding, oh, I'm doing this because I love you.
Right.
And the mixed signals from that, it's just the poor
Right.
kid, the head, the poor
Yeah,
child's head would explode.
Right.
So normally after a trial, does a child tend to have to go through counseling, or what happens to the poor child afterwards?
Well, most of the time it doesn't even make it to a trial.
Okay.
So that's the really hard thing. I think even a lot of people feel like that their case is going to go to trial and that the defense, the district attorney is going to prosecute. And the reality is that there isn't usually physical evidence. Because
Okay.
you really
So the person walks, or
a lot of times, yeah, they don't even get arrested.
can they get a restraining order, or does that not count because you need proof for that?
Sometimes no, yeah.
Wow.
And unfortunately, if it's like a parent, sometimes that parent can even get custody of the child because they can just say that the ex is just doing it to be mean.
Yeah.
So it's a really fine line to walk, especially if the person has a role of custody. It's hard because here you're telling people you need to report abuse, but the reality is if it's a custodial arrangement, you might not want to report right away. You might want to wait until you have more evidence.
Okay.
And so it's hard because here we are saying, no, once there's abuse going on, you need to report it. But the reality is it can actually bite them on the other end if they report it.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's really hard. But so, as soon as the child discloses, that child needs to be going into therapy.
Okay.
And a lot of times the case if it does go to trial, it might take a year or two. And so some cases it's actually been drawn out so long that the child becomes they're no longer a credible witness because, say, for example, they were 3 or 4 when it happened and now they're 5 or 6. And
10,
how is
yeah.
their memory? How can they really
Exactly,
remember
yeah,
these things?
okay.
So it's hard. I don't think it's.
And a lot of times, people can ask them very leading questions, and that can change what they're,
Right.
what they think they're remembering.
Right, exactly. So I hate to say it, but it's like I almost don't want parents to focus on that.
Okay.
I want them to focus on their kids and helping the
preventing it in the first
child.
place, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I want because the reality is that if it does happen and you do everything right, that you're still not going to get that justice that you're looking for.
Okay.
In talking to like Bill Cosby, right? 50 women
Yeah.
have come out accusing him, and most of these women have not even said that they want anything from him. A lot of them just came out to back up the other women.
Yeah.
And people are still saying that these women are going after him for money or slandering his name. I'm like, why? Why would these women do this
Yeah.
for no reason? 50 women that don't even know each other. And then there are the men that came out saying everyone knew that Bill Cosby was like this, that it was
nobody's
common
saying
knowledge. And so, but there are people that still don't want to believe it.
Right.
And he's probably not going to, see a day in jail
Yeah.
for it. And that's just the reality.
Wow. So let's back up a little bit. We were talking about a while ago. My kid goes to your house for a play date. No,
Yeah.
not you because you already have it. Wants to bring that pamphlet of information. Where would somebody get that information? Would they check onto the website?
Yep, we have an online
Okay.
store. So if they go to the website, mamabeareffect.org, there's a link for the online store, and it takes you over there. So we have parent packs. We have, like, My Body Belongs to Me bracelets for kids.
Okay.
Just kind of a cool thing to, when you have these
Yeah.
conversations with your kids, and they can wear it to their play date, and maybe the other parent will say, hey, where did you get that from? Car magnets. One thing we did accomplish last year, we trademarked the first awareness ribbon for child sexual abuse.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
You
So
go, girl.
I know it was rather, it's kind of sad that there wasn't one already, because there's one for so many things
There's
out
one for
there.
everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and actually, it's in chartreuse, and there's no other awareness ribbon in that color. So it's very unique.
I don't even think I know how to spell chartreuse.
Yeah.
What color is that? It's like a green, isn't it?
It's like a yellowish green.
Okay, because I saw the ribbon, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't know what color chartreuse is.
Yeah, but we successfully trademarked that with the U.S.
Excellent.
Trademark Office. So we've been able to produce magnets and pins and use it on our logo and other things. So that's been great.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that you're by yourself or you have a very limited staff. If somebody wanted to volunteer and help you, would there be opportunities to help you?
If we're doing like a community event,
Okay.
like Burlington Day, or if, I do have a trailer, we've done parades. If someone wanted to volunteer and walk the parade with us, that's when I need like hands-on people. But I've also created other ways for people to volunteer. We have door hangers that we started selling since pretty much 2014. We started selling them very inexpensively. We sell them below cost, just because we feel like if people are willing to go around their neighborhood and raise awareness, that we want to be able to empower these people as much as we can.
Okay, so if somebody's going to do the doorknob campaign, it's like a little door hanger.
A little door hanger, yep.
And do they knock on the door? Do they just
leave it on the door? So you don't even have to, it doesn't have to be intimidating. We did have one woman that did knock on doors to talk to people about it, and someone actually disclosed to her that it happened to her, and she had never disclosed to anyone in her life.
Wow.
So it was
Okay,
just
the poor woman on the outside of the house is going, oh, great, now what do I do?
No, well, she understood, you know what I mean? This was important to her. So she was able to have that conversation with her and just support that woman in her disclosure. So it raises awareness in multiple ways. And I think that was the incredible thing. When we sent out the press release that we had trademarked the awareness ribbon and sent out the email and everything, and people, shared it on social media or emailed it to people, I had multiple people come back to me and just say that someone I know through work just responded to me and just said, "Thank you so much for this."
Wow.
And so that's all they said. And I said to them, like, you know what that means. And it's great. It's great because that person
And it just
realizes.
makes you feel, yes, I am making that difference that I wanted to make.
Right, because it's just such a silent thing.
Okay.
And it shouldn't be.
Now, you meaning Mama Bear Effect, has a special fundraiser soiree coming up. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, I love event planning, so if none of my children have a birthday in February, so we had our first tea party, Princess Pirate Tea Party, in December of 2014. So just before I came on the last time, and Christmas is just crazy, and you're just competing with everyone, and like no one's around, and everything's crazy. So I passed it this year, even though people were emailing me like, "Are you guys doing that tea party again?" So I was like, "Oh God, no." But
yes, I am. Just not in December with everything else.
I'm like,
going
just hold on.
around.
I think we're planning it right now. So it's going to be at the Grandview Farm,
Excellent.
which I'm really excited about because it's a great space.
It's beautiful in there.
It's amazing.
So if you want to know what it looks like,
I know. And actually, it's gonna be pretty impressive. We had more time to plan it. Last time we planned it in 6 weeks.
Wow.
So this time I had about 3 months to plan it.
Much
so that's
better.
Made all the difference.
Twice the time, twice the
Yes.
event.
Oh my gosh! But so we have a 1 o'clock, and there's
It's
going to be
a Valentine
tea
tea
soiree. So there's going to be
black tie or no?
You could, because we're actually going to have chair covers with the sash.
I don't even have those for my wedding.
I know a lot of people don't, but we actually have a very good list of vendors and other people in the community that have. If they go onto the website, there's a link for the page for the event, so you can see the logos of all the people who have supported the event. So they've donated their services.
Okay.
So we have the magician at 1 o'clock. And then at 4 o'clock, we have a live classical guitarist who will also be taking requests
Now, do
off
you have
of
to
his
be there,
list.
is the performance right at 1 or?
I think we're going to set it for like 1:15, 1:30, so people can kind of mingle a
roughly
little
an
bit.
hour for the whole thing?
It's like about an hour and a half.
Hour and a half, okay.
Yep. So I think the magic show is going to be about 45 minutes or so. It's not going to be the
Okay.
whole time.
So that's at the 1 o'clock tea.
Yep.
And then there's a 4 o'clock
Yep.
tea with the classical guitarist.
Yep. And both of them we're going to have
Silent
a
auction
craft for
raffle.
kids.
Oh,
We have
fun.
raffles.
Okay.
Disney donated 4 Hopper passes to Disney World in Orlando. So
Wow.
that was great. Yeah, that was amazing. So we're going to have some really fun raffle items and some really, really nice silent auction items.
Okay.
There's going to be a photo booth where families can just come and take photos,
Oh,
cute little Valentine photos. And I'm also, at the 4 o'clock, I'm going to have an amazing professional photographer who has donated her time to do professional headshots.
Wow.
They can see those on the website. She is amazing.
Excellent.
So we're really excited. It's going to be really fancy.
Now, are you still in the market for silent auction items
Yes.
or baskets or anything? So if somebody locally had something to donate to a wonderful cause, I know
Yeah,
not
we're
supposed to
looking,
look at the camera,
for
but-
tickets to sporting events, or
okay.
if it could be family themed, it could be couple themed, it could be just for women or just for men. We have the whole range that we're kind of looking to fill.
Okay.
So that's definitely
Excellent. And information is on the website for
on the website,
donating
and
for
we have an
that.
event page through Facebook
Okay.
too. So if they go to the Facebook page, they'll find the event
Now,
page.
does someone need to buy tickets in advance, or will tickets be available at the door?
Tickets
or-
may be available at the door if we don't sell out.
Okay.
We're kind of in the part right now where the ticket sales are really starting to come in.
Okay.
So we're going to try to play it by ear because we only have a maximum seating of 100 people per
Okay.
tea session. So we're going to see what we're capable of doing.
Now, is it in the barn section?
It's in the hall. Yep, in the barn hall.
Ooh, I've
Yep.
never been in there before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be really
So that
fun.
is February 13th,
Yes, Saturday.
Saturday. Dress to impress.
Yes. I know last time we asked people if they wanted to dress up as
So
princesses.
there's no princess or pirate theme.
Yeah, but they could definitely dress up a little fancy. I think
Okay,
they should.
so I shouldn't come with the patch and the
Yeah.
sword. Okay.
Unless you have a fancy pirate attire.
I don't know. My Halloween costume this year was, the pirate chick. No, I won't. I'll dress presentably.
Oh, we're going to have face painting too. We just
Oh,
got a couple
fun.
people to do face painting. So
Excellent.
yeah, it's going to be really fun. Yeah, and plus it's
Awesome.
cold. There's nothing really, going on. So hopefully, I know a lot of people will come out.
All right.
And then it's just a fun way for us to kind of let people know that we exist here in Burlington. So we are going to have, a goodie bag for all the adults.
Ooh.
Especially if anyone came to the last one, they know the parents got a little goodie bag.
Oh,
So we are planning our goodie bag for the parents this year.
It's
And then
not all about the kids.
no,
The kids are important,
we
but
make
it's not.
sure that they get taken care of too.
Okay.
So
One last question, unless you have anything to add about that.
no, I think that's good.
Okay.
Yep.
One last question. I had you on a year ago, and we're looking, we kind of talked about the progress you've made over the past year. Where do you see this organization going within the next year? Where would you like it to go?
Well, this year we're hopefully going to put together the new parent pack that's going to be really intense. It's going to have information about parenting as a survivor, which is something that no one
yeah.
really talks about, triggers and all those types of
Okay.
things. There's going to be a lot of good information in there. And we actually last year started a new grant program where other nonprofits across the country and school systems have been applying for donations of our materials. So as our funding has allowed, we have been able to fulfill those donations. So actually just this week, we sent out enough materials to educate 500 adults for an Indian reservation in Montana. That requested.
Excellent.
So, that has been great because I volunteer all of my time, which is probably like 20 to 30 hours a week, 24/7 because I'm always like responding to people or doing whatever. But all the funding goes directly to raising awareness and educating people.
Wow.
And then I'm really excited, we're going to be doing a series of educational videos.
Ooh, okay.
For parents, a short, 3 to
PSA?
5
Okay.
minutes, to just try to cover some of these bases, these kinds of the questions you have. How do we have these conversations? What do we need to know?
Right.
So we're going to be working on that this spring, which I'm really excited about.
That sounds so cool.
I know, yes.
All right. Well, I do want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me again.
It's great having you last. I think we've started this annual tradition.
I know, I like it. I know.
So thank you very much. And I would also like to thank everyone at home for tuning in, and hopefully you found our conversation this evening as enlightening and as encouraging as I have. Have a great night. Thanks.